Kyle, you've had some great experiences over the course of your career 17 years, 5 years as an entrepreneur, 12 years in SaaS or marketing software, some IPOs and acquisitions in there. And so you've picked up some lessons along the way. And you have 6 lessons to share. Let's hear these lessons. So why don't we kick it off with lesson number one, a meaningful story.
Yeah, and as we go through these lessons, I just want you to know that it's not stack ranked in order of importance. You can pick and choose. This is just my experiences over my time at like Exact Targeted Salesforce and Lessonly and Seismic. But a meaningful story scales culture and community. My favorite quote ever is from Ben Horowitz, which is the company's story is the company's strategy. You and I both know, as you know, in the marketing world, the story is everything. I think where marketers lose is when they focus so much on only the external story of the company and not both the internal story of the employees as well as the external story of what the company is selling. Like what's the product offering? I believe that a great story will do two things. It will help scale your culture, and especially, I know you and I could talk for hours about VC backed companies, but in VC backed companies, you're scaling much faster. You're hiring hundreds of people in a quarter or a month or whatever, no matter how big the company is. It helps you scale culture if you understand the story and how you onboard employees appropriately. So at like Lessonly, our mission statement is we help people do better work so they can live better lives. And do better work was our storyline. It was our external messaging because we had a training and sales coaching product. We help sales reps do better work, but it was also our internal story as a company that we help our employees do their best work, and then we had our values and all that stuff. So what I learned at Lessonly was by codifying those values and that messaging, it created a stronger culture internally with and externally with our customers in the market. So number one, a great story scales internal and external. If that makes sense, the story, the culture.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, how does you also have said that story helps you win competitive
yeah,
deals? How so?
if you tell the story the right way. So the Lessonly story is that we wrote a book called Do Better Work. It was by our CEO. It was about the leadership values of Lessonly. And what happened was our prospects were buying the book, and Max was going and speaking to these leadership teams as we were in the sales process. So if we were competing against a training or a work ramp, none of that was happening on the competitive side. Max was in the room with these leaders despite the fact that we were in a sales cycle. So it just helped in terms of relationship building with champions and buyers. And it was also different. Like we weren't giving a book that was like, here's the 6 steps to build a great sales training platform. It was, here's how you can become a better leader. So it was higher level, but I think because it was higher level, it worked better because we weren't selling. We were just saying, this is how we think you should build a team. And by the way, Lessonly, our product fits really well when it comes to like leadership development and onboarding employees and all that stuff. So it was definitely helpful in the competitive deals for sure. And we used it as part of ABM programs. Books were used through postal, reps could send them out to people and all that.
You've also said that story plus category creation is even more win. So how do those two things fit together?
Yeah. So the Lessonly story was, in my opinion, less impactful in the market because we didn't have a category we fit in. We fit in learning and development. We fit in sales readiness. We fit in all these different categories that analysts were talking about. Um, a great example is Seismic. They have a great story to the market, but they also have built a category around sales enablement. And I believe that with a great messaging and storytelling that they do, and the fact that they built a category, it shows because they're 10x the size of Leslie, right? It's just a much larger company. But I think it's more valuable when you can communicate to analysts about what you do, but also move people in a positive way to buy something outside of just you need the best fucking sales enablement platform in the world. Like say something different. Like you got to have a better story than we're the best or we're the
What's
largest. Or
what's Seismic story then?
it's one platform to manage all enablement across the entire company. So it's not a bunch of different point solutions. And they have brought on this idea after the acquisition of Lessonly of how do we help people manage content appropriately, manage onboarding appropriately to help them do their best work. So it's we kind of combined it as the companies were connecting, but I think they've done a good job telling both stories. It's a different
You've
market too because it's enterprise.
you've also said that a story will fail if the employees don't believe it or if the customers. Um,
Same with categories. Same with categories. You and I can name 50 people that have tried to create 50 companies that have tried to create categories. There's thousands of categories out there. Just go to G2, right? They're everywhere. When a customer is not saying it, it's not a category. You can talk like Lessonly when I joined Lessonly, we had learning automation software. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. They wanted and that's my problem. You and I could talk about category creation in general because I think most of the time people are doing it wrong. And I learned that at Lessonly, but nobody cared because nobody was talking about learning automation. They were just talking about the product benefits. Like, what are the benefits that it's giving me? I don't care if Forrester has a Now Tech coming out or whatever. But it's a fine line, and it's hard to do. That's why there's books like Play Bigger out there, or Anthony Kanata's book, right, about building categories.
Your next lesson is about making customers your heroes. So how do you do that?
It's pretty simple. Great companies are building partnership with great customers. I am kind of tired of going to websites and not seeing not seeing a customer's face, just seeing air quotes, not putting them at the center of the marketing, trying to figure out who the customers are. I also think that marketing leaders and a lot of leaders in general aren't spending enough time talking to customers, which blows my mind. I had to learn that pretty quickly, but it's if you're going to do a campaign, put the customer at the center of the campaign. Like at Seismic, we rolled out an out-of-home campaign where we put our customers on the billboards. We put our customers talking about what they do best. Now, of course, Seismic is on it, right? Seismic was the sponsor of it, but we wanted to celebrate the customer instead of saying Seismic's the number one platform for sales enablement. It's like, hey, let's have Nicole from Citrix talk about how she leads enablement, and Seismic's just the supporting platform for it. And that's making customer. Let's see, Marketo did it brilliantly in the past with like their 50, I think it was called 50 Fearless or the Fearless Marketers or something, where they had like huge, it was like a sports venue. They had huge banners of people hanging at their conference, and it was like they were celebrities, these 50 CMOs. And I've always loved that. So make the customer hero is just putting them at the center of marketing, and even just doing something simple like start a freaking customer advisory board. Talk to your customer. I don't know if you see this very often, and I'm sure you do, but marketers don't spend enough time talking to the customer base, which is crazy. It's insane.
I guess the bigger the company gets, the further removed you are as an executive.
Well, you can be, unless you actually use technology to your benefit with like Gong. Gong is a great example. Like nobody should have the excuse that they don't have time.
That's right.
If you're listening to podcasts, you have time to listen to Gong calls with customers, or you have time to cut one meeting out of your day and put 30 minutes on the calendar with a top customer and understand their challenges.
Your third lesson is about revenue versus brand, or rather, revenue first, brand second.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I believe that brand marketers have the hardest job in the world because it's really, really hard to justify spend. It's really, really hard. to talk about why you should spend X amount of money without using like attribution models or share of voice or whatever the hell metric you can come up with, NPS scores. I believe that marketing should be revenue, generating revenue or pipeline first, and then making the brand investments once they've figured out the revenue side. Revenue gives you a seat at the table as a marketing leader. And if you think about budgets, it usually breaks down 60% should be demand gen, 20 or 30% should be brand spend, and then 10 to 15 is operations. But that 60% is your most important. So at Leslie, we were spending 60 to 70% on generating inbound revenue. And then the 20 to 30% that we spent on brand was less important to the board because we were hitting our revenue numbers. So I could go we did a Lego llama, we did a board game, we did events, tons of digital events. And as long as our efficiency number stayed with what the board wanted across sales and marketing, they never questioned the brand side. And I would argue that the brand played huge in our acquisition and the multiple we got on the acquisition because we had something that was valuable when it came to just the brand. Now, people love talking about branding. They don't love resourcing branding. Boards, investors, like brand's the best thing, but then when you get in the weeds, it's like you want to spend $100,000 on out of home. You want to spend it on billboards, and yeah, maybe you should because nobody else is doing it. Maybe you should do direct mail instead of a ton of money in LinkedIn ads. But this is my soapbox if you can't tell, so I can talk an hour about just that. But generate revenue first as a marketing team, and then support that with doing cool brand investments.
Lesson number 4 is building on this brand thing. Be experiential and irrational.
Yeah, Rory Sutherland, he wrote a book called Alchemy. He was, I think he's president of Ogilvy, I think,
yes.
Chairman of Ogilvy.
Mm-hmm.
I read that book and I was like, hell yeah. Because it kind of explained the way that I think as a marketer, which is, and I'm just going to read a quote to kind of explain it. We can get in the weeds on stuff that we've done, but it is much easier to be fired for being illogical than it is for being unimaginative. The fatal issue is that logic always gets you exactly the same place as your competitors. And I marketing without allowing your team to be a little bit irrational, you're never as creative as you can be. So for brand campaigns, as an example, we never put a revenue number or a pipeline generation number on a brand campaign because I didn't want the creative team to be stuck thinking about a pipeline number. I wanted them to be as creative as possible because our competitor was not going to say, we need to send a golden llama to people through direct mail. They were never going to do that, or they were never going to design a board game. And I believe that differentiated us as a company because it was the experience. And ultimately, as marketers, the only thing that makes us relevant is the experience we're creating for the prospect or the customer. That's it. That's our relevance level. So if you can create some irrationality, it kind of helps with the creativity of the team and all that stuff. That's why we launched clothing lines at Leslie at Seismic, and it makes things more fun too. New ideas differentiate brands, and they create memorable experiences.
How does one come up with irrational stuff?
Hiring creative people and giving them space to think. Usually what happens is that you sit a bunch of creative people in the room and you're like, let's run a Post-it note thing where we put ideas on the board and everybody chooses what my favorite thing is. Just give them space. You don't have to be in the room. Say, there's not any guidelines. Just go think about the most creative thing possible. And that's where we got some of our creative ideas. And I had to be irrational enough as a leader to say, fucking go do it. I love it.
What's an example of
launching a clothing line? We had olilama.co. We launched it on a Shopify store. It's not up anymore, unfortunately, but you can go. Seismic has one called Aftershock, aftershock.seismic.com. And it's a Shopify store. It's on-demand printing, and it's clothing line. And there was no reason. Now it worked into the sales cycle because you could give gift cards to the clothing line to prospects. We used it as the employee store, but it was pretty irrational at the time because it was like, why would we do this? It's just a clothing line. And we launched it. I think we had over 1,000 orders in a couple months. I mean, we had people buying it that wasn't even associated with Lessonly. So, and it's fun. Creative people love designing clothes. Like who doesn't like doing that? I even like doing it. I'm not that creative.
Your next lesson is encourage alignment through shared goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think Udi from Gong says this, which is you should know your sales leader's coffee order. I think that's a direct quote from him. Alignment between all business units is very important no matter what size and scale. And for me, marketing should own OKRs with sales. And that's pretty much the extent of the lesson. Where people get siloed is when marketing's off doing whatever the hell they want and sales is off trying to hit a quota and nobody's talking because they don't. That's why marketing should own a revenue number. Marketing should be responsible for some percentage of a rep's quota. Then you're forcing alignment. I also think that you could have BDRs report into marketing as well if you have an outbound motion. I think that also forces alignment, but shared goals is the most important thing.
What is the North Star metric for marketing?
Revenue.
Some people say it should be total pipeline generated. Some say it's marketing influence revenue. Um,
I think it depends on the business. Like Lessonly was high velocity. Half of our deals closed in quarter. We had a closed one revenue number because our inbound motion was so strong. Seismic, enterprise level, huge sales cycles, huge deals. It was a total pipeline number. But also you can do an inbound pipeline number as well, inbound sourced pipeline. So I think it depends on the business model, but it should have a number. This shouldn't be like marketing's a production org. Like when you're a production org, like you're just one sheets and decks everywhere, like you're gonna get your team cut in half. Budget's gonna be taken from you. Your leader's not gonna have a seat at the table. So having that own revenue number helps align sales, marketing, and CS if marketing's also involved in like net revenue retention or net dollar retention. And that gives even more support from a marketing side. And a lot of times marketers don't think about what happens after the deals close,
mhm.
which I think is a loss.
Is customer success also part of this
Yeah.
holy trinity? Or
Yeah, well, but you and I both know with net, especially in software, net dollar retention, you're a more valuable company if it's over 120%. And if marketing can help support that, great. If CS is quota bearing, even better. But marketing should support the entire life cycle, not just let's do a bunch of top of funnel crap and hopefully, we succeed as a company. I just don't think that's when you're so obsessed over the experience, you should be obsessed with every facet of the experience, not just how do I get more things to sales.
you've also said that the glue that holds everything together is RevOps, revenue operations.
Yeah, it's fairly new, like RevOps, BizOps, like it's something I came across. Seismic, I think, built it appropriately. Their BizOps leader lives on the exec team. When it's a smaller companies like a Lessonly, BizOps, Sales Ops, Marketing Ops lived in the CFO, under the CFO. Sometimes they live in the teams, like Marketing Ops, Sales Ops, CS. I believe that it's a separate team. They're the people that should be running the pipeline and forecast meetings. They should be running the revenue meetings. They should be running the reporting because they are the people that keep revenue teams accountable, not marketing and sales arguing.
What about meeting cadences to bring all the stakeholders, sales and marketing together? How often should they meet and what should they talk about?
Revenue generating teams should be meeting weekly. Like there's a pipeline and forecast meeting where you're saying what happened last week, what's going to happen next week. Your inbound leader's giving a called shot. Your outbound leader's doing a called shot. Your sales leader knows how much dollars is going to move into closed one or move to the next stage of the sales cycle. And the operations team is keeping people accountable. And then I think it's up to the business unit leaders to be meeting weekly. I don't understand how you can grow a business or do business where the sales leader and the marketing leader is meeting once a month. Just seems crazy to me. Like y'all should be tied at the hip constantly because you have to be. You're moving so fast, and if you want to be competitive, You want to be able to move as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that's through alignment. It doesn't have to be really long meetings, but you should be touching base for sure.
And where does product marketing fit in here?
My number one failure, man, not hiring product marketing soon enough at Lessonly. Um, product marketing fits. Product marketing in general. You mean from a meeting perspective or just alignment?
Alignment and as well as meeting.
I think product marketing. I think that kind of forces the alignment with the product team, in my opinion. Like if you're hiring with like for every product manager, you're hiring a product marketer. But I also think they help with just the enablement. Like you can argue that sales enablement should live in enablement. I also think that it works pretty well within product marketing, where you are constantly enabling and training and coaching the customer facing teams on the changes in the market, the persona challenges, what the hell is product doing on the roadmap, that type of stuff. And I think that they could also be seen as that as a hub. You know, at Lessonly, our product marketing org lived within sales enablement, which was fairly um, actually is very odd. That doesn't you don't see that happen very often because they were the hub with all the different revenue spokes. So product marketing, I think, is essential to just understanding the market in general. And without that, it's just really hard to make decisions on how to position a product or pricing of a product, the competitive landscape, win loss, all that stuff.
Your sixth and final lesson is invest in your team's career.
Yeah, so I'll make it pretty short because we could talk about five dysfunctions of the team and all that stuff. But your job as a leader is that the people on your team should never have to use their resume to get their next job. Like you should be talking to them about network development. You should be talking to them about talking to their peers in other companies. Now, I hate the term networking, but you know what I mean. Like building a community of people around them to where they are poached from you, not, we failed and they have to go find something. Like you as a leader should be training them for their next thing. And if their next thing is not at the company that you're at, you should be fine with that and you should be excited because life's short. Life's even shorter in venture backed software. But that's what I tell every team I manage. It's you should never have to use a resume to get your next job after you work on this team because that's what we're going to talk about. It's more about your career than it is the job you have right now.
And in very practical terms, then, what do you do? How do you ensure that as a manager?
Very practical. It is how many meetings are they having on a quarterly basis with their peer group? That's like do what you need to do 2 a month. You need to meet with, hey, demand gen manager, I would love for you to meet with 2 other demand gen managers, and I'd love to know what you talked about. I that came very naturally to me because that my father taught me that early on. I hated it when we talked about it in high school, but he taught me it. And it just does not come naturally to people to say, oh, I should go talk to my peers. Mm-hmm. Like they're so focused on their day to day that they don't think about what you could learn from just, and this is why we do podcasts. This is why we listen to podcasts. That's why, like, if I'm really, really stuck on something, I'm going to send Udi a note through LinkedIn, right? So hopefully, from Gong or any of the other CMOs that I'm connected to, because that's what makes the job fun. But yeah, I mean, I would have it as a personal OKR for your teams, is that they have to meet peers.
In addition to these 6 core lessons, you've had some other interesting thoughts that I would love your take on. Like one is budget size doesn't matter. It's about moving quickly.
Yeah, what I found with moving into a larger org when we moved from Lessonly to Seismic, where my budget was basically 10x what I had at Lessonly, the tactics that we were employing didn't change at all. It was just the size. It was just the size of what we were spending. So for me, I thought that, hey, with the larger budgets, you're still doing a ton of testing. You're still trying to figure out the most optimal way to spend this money. It just doesn't change. It does not matter whether you have 1 million in program spend or 10 million in program spend or 100 million in program spend, you're still doing the same type of tactical things as a team, or you should be. When you don't, then you've got an issue.